Welcome back to the Deeply Graphic Design Cast. My name is Nick Longo. In this episode, we are talking once again with our good buddy Bill Gardner from logolounge.com. Bill comes on once a year, talks a little bit about his logo trends report for each and every year, but more importantly, it's just a fantastic case study to look at if you're heavily into branding and designing logos. There's so much great wisdom in here, and he shares his report each and every year. Happy to have him back for the 2024 report. If you are watching on YouTube or Spotify, we hope you are, because we're doing this all on video now. You get a great representation. You'll see all of the logo trends that we're talking about. But if you're only listening to this on audio, you can always go to logolounge.com and look at the 2024 logo trends, and I'll try to find a link to it, and we'll put it into the show notes for this episode as well. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Bill Gardner from Logo Lounge. Always awkward, but again, what were those first few things that you started to see as you were going through all of the submissions and this year's work?
Okay, I'm going to confess something, which is that as I'm starting to go through these, that I go, okay, there's 35,000 logos that I've got to go through since the last report. So I'm going,
Oh my gosh.
holy shit, this is going to take forever. And the first thing that I do is I find myself pulling off stuff that was in last year's report. I'm going, well, I've already reported this.
Wow.
So then I started going, okay, well, I was right. So yeah, everybody's doing it now. So I was right. And then I started thinking,
interesting.
oh, maybe they just read the report and decided they'd do that.
Wow.
So then I get
Good
a little
point.
bit of self-doubt in there because I start thinking everybody's just really listening to me. And that really bothers me a little bit when people, listen to what I'm having to say. But then I get into it and then I start going, yeah, I think I saw quite a few of those. And the other one that hurts me a little bit is when I start pulling something off and I'm going, wow, look, everybody's doing that. And then I figure out it's the same artist that was doing all of them. And I'm going, okay, well, that cuts that out. We can't do that yet. No. All these little tricks.
Yeah. You could start a trend, but boy, to make a trend, it's got to be hundreds of designers doing it, right?
Yeah.
That kind of is the definition right there, right?
I've got a designer from Russia that sticks a little red circle behind all of these line drawing things that he does. And I kept going, God, everybody's sticking red circles in there. And I just figured out that he was submitting at various times throughout the year. And I was pulling all of his stuff off. And I was going, okay.
Interesting.
But there actually were a couple of other people with red dots behind him. And I was kind of going, oh.
Huh.
Wow.
Sometimes stuff just sneaks by you.
What is that about? Interesting.
I know that
Well,
look,
have you
and
noticed
I
that
tried to
people-
emulate that before. I know that look.
Yeah.
It's almost artisanal. It kind of, you see it in a lot of like Italian food packaging a lot of times. That kind of vibe.
I kind of felt like, and I love him, so I'm sure he's not going to take this wrong, but I kind of felt like, oh, I don't know, that's just kind of a B minus logo, but if I stick a red dot behind it, there's an A. I know that, okay, this is winning. Now, if I stick a red dot in there, it's good. It just needs
I've
a little
always
bit
wondered,
of
are people manipulative to some degree with their submissions? Do people?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. Yeah.
I would, how inevitably that's going to be the case in this world right now altogether.
Yeah.
You got to expect it, I
Okay,
suppose.
so let's just take care of business here and say right now for all those people that submit logos, and then when we do the call for entry and they submit them again, we've got a method that knocks out,
good.
that one of those two logos, so it doesn't. They don't both get judged. But some people are kind of going, I don't know, maybe if I submit that thing 4 or 5 times, it'll get a better chance. And
That's
so
great.
quit it. Just don't do that. But there are those people that do. So
Yeah.
I
It's all
have
good.
seen a lot of folks get their first, logo in the book. I love seeing some young designers who I've seen kind of, rise in the rankings over the years, and they get that first acknowledgement from your book. It's always awesome to see that. That's great.
Yeah, very rewarding.
I know Mark Hiron, who's just a hell of a designer from the UK. I'm still recalling when he did a book opening, and he opened it up, and it was his first logo in the book. And he literally, when he got to the page that his logo was on, started to tear. And, and it was one of the, it was incredibly endearing. And he got, I'm suspecting it was a fake tear because he got millions of hits on this thing. He planned the whole thing out. He was playing the emotions. But I will say that it helps you realize that, at that moment you can tell your mom what you do.
Yeah.
You can bring them the book and go,
You
"I
can
did
provide
this."
a visual that's associated with that
Yeah.
reward. Yes.
That's really
for sure.
great.
It tugs your heart when somebody gets into the book for the very first time.
Especially when non-designers go, oh, now I get what you do all day. Because you're in a book now.
Yeah. You try and get in a book.
Yeah.
You've been trying to get in a book for 5 years. What are you doing in your spare time?
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
so those first,
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say those first few things that were picking your brain when you were kind of going through. What were some of the things you started to notice before we get into the report? Any top line things that you were seeing fresh that kind of
for the
stood out?
first time that captivate you?
So sometimes you have something that you've put in a prior report and it goes away. And sometimes you put something in a prior report and it has legs and it starts to branch off into other things. And this year in particular, that little dazzle star, which is, just basically a 4-pointed star, that little, the thing Stardust Hotel made famous because they had 1 million of them up on their logo. That has taken on all kinds of new meaning in the last year. Because people are starting to associate it with AI, and it's becoming that building block that AI designers are using as part of their branding. And I think one of the things that I hadn't realized was that, there's been such a struggle over the last couple of years because AI has only been with us for a couple of years.
Right.
Publicly. So that, when people start trying to identify it, they're going back to archival things that really don't signify AI. It's kind of like, well, a light bulb, that'd be good. No, wait, no. A light bulb, no, wait, that's not. Okay, computer chip, a circuit board. And, and it's all this old shit that, it really doesn't speak to what its product is. And you got to talk about, what the outcome is as opposed to what it drew from. And I get it. But ultimately, people were kind of using an asterisk. And I was going, okay, well, is it because it's special? You got to asterisk that. And then somebody says, I know, it's a dazzle star. No, wait, 3 dazzle stars. So that's kind of where we are right now, is 3 dazzle stars, a mama, a papa, and a baby, kind of
good
gathered together there.
Different in size, right? And randomly spaced.
Yeah. And that as of today.
Guilty.
Are you guilty?
Oh,
no shit, really?
I've used that. Okay, maybe not so much maybe like in logo, but it's like when we were doing merch for a restaurant and we had their catchphrase on there, and the way you can put those little dazzle, I call them like little magic sparks, right?
Yeah,
they're like they're just like
that.
And to me, and it works for it. It was a very mid-century kind of modern aesthetic.
So here's what you just said.
They can have a modernized look to them too.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, they're kind of timeless to a degree, Mikhail.
You can soften
I think that, the thing that really strikes me about what you just said as far as that magic is years ago, there were a number of logos that were coming out that looked like crystal orbs, and especially associated with computer. And it was kind of like whoever was coming up with these was going, so here's how it works. And somebody got bored and their eyes glazed over because you couldn't understand what they were saying. And they finally just said, you know what, just go with the crystal ball. It's kind of like, it's magic. It's in there, And I kind of feel like that's what AI is people get glazed over trying to understand exactly what, you're trying to explain to them. And they kind of go, why don't you just use that little dazzle star? It
I
means
like
magic.
that analogy.
And there's just, it's some magic
application.
That does
I like
it for
it.
you.
Yeah.
That's why they're using it.
2 things I noticed too. You were talking about RGB being kind of heavily used in a lot of branding, because they probably have no plans of printing anything. And then the gradients. And I think that goes to a big point of branding being only online, right? Like I never want to do, if it's a print heavy thing, we stay away from any RGB brights, right? You can't get that green if you're trying to print it.
No, it's frustrating actually.
And gradients, like the Rams logo, it was you got this like, why would you put a gradient of yellow to white in? It's like, try embroidering that. It's impossible, so like, what are your thoughts? Like, you saw a lot of that.
We have this conversation with our own clients so much. And in taking a look at it, it's here and it's not going to go away. And if anything, gradients are starting to take on a whole new kind of essence because people are understanding how to use them differently. You can now run a ramp or gradient from orange to blue, for instance, without it turning to brown in the middle, which if you know your colors, you know that orange and blue make brown. You can start to bring in pods of it like Apple uses, not Apple pods, but little pods within Apple Pay, for instance, that start to merge that gradient together. But I think one of the things that you've got to keep in mind is that, there are two generations now that are totally unfamiliar with CMYK. That RGB is what they were weaned on. We started throwing devices in the hands of kids at at their earliest age to pacify them. And you're looking at pure light when you're looking at a screen. You're not looking at reflective light. And when you think of CMYK, you're dependent on light to come down, hit the page, bounce back up at your eye, and your eye to determine it. But if you think about two generations of people that only know light and only know color in light, so it's their perspective of green is a much more brilliant perspective than a generation that grew up with RGB. That grew up with CMYK. And it's just one of those things where people have different perspectives on colors in different generations now. And, if you have a client that comes in and you've designed a logo for them and you suggest that you need to design a business card for them, they're kind of, tell me about this business card thing. What is that? So there are so many projects that never go to print. That clients entirely are, in that digital dominion. That's where they live. That's where their customers live.
It's a tough one too. And one thing I had to do with a recent client was tell them in advance, if you ever want to print this green, it's going to be a PMS, custom color, and
it's going to be
and consider budget for everything. But luckily, they do live like 90% online. When you want to do merch, when you don't do anything else.
So many
tough one.
Contacts believe that you can print any RGB value.
Yeah. And
they don't find any issue with it at all. It's so frustrating. And then you sound like the snob trying to argue otherwise.
Exactly.
Yeah, no. God, if I could have the time back, I would look so much younger if I could have the time back for all the time I've spent explaining to clients that color is never going to be the same on all devices. It's never going to be the same on everything that you print. It's never going to be the same on all that there's hex code and that there's RGB and there's CMYK and there's Pantone and there's the stuff that comes off your printer and the stuff that comes off my printer and it's going to be different.
And then surprisingly and unfortunately, a lot of them don't see the distinction.
Yeah.
The way we do.
You mean they can't perceive the difference in them?
Right.
Or they don't, You'd be surprised the number
differently.
It definitely does. But I've got to tell you, I've got clients that call me up and they go, I'm holding this up and I'm looking at my screen and this print piece is different than what I see on the screen. I'm going, well, yeah.
Hello.
The thing I just explained about light, reflection.
Yep.
Well, that's our
good.
job.
You pulled up flat boxes.
Yes. But
let's start.
We're going to get into it. I love that you just brought that up. Yeah. This is great. I love always seeing this report because I'm curious. I want to see what rose to the top. I want to see like what people are doing. It's a good spot for all of us as designers just to see. It's like a state of the, industry when this comes out in a lot of ways.
Totally.
The state of our disunion.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. We're starting with the first one here. And for those of you watching it, you see what we've got. Come over and check us out either on YouTube or on our Spotify app. You can watch the video with this because this is the visual one. This is the one we get Bill on here and we want to show this report off. So we're starting with Flatbox.
So fun.
Where'd this come from?
As everybody can imagine, if you look at a hexagon, a hexagon is literally the outside shape of a cube if you're looking at it from a point or an isometric perspective.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So we all kind of get that. You can imagine a hexagon that's divided into 3 segments, equal segments, and each one's a little bit lighter or darker than the previous one. It looks like a cube looking at it from the corner. But what happens if instead you take that shape and you eliminate all of the shading and it's just one flat tone, and then you start to extrude it So these are all this idea of isometric shapes. Most of them are Adam Anderson from our offices. We were talking about this. He was going, they look like bars of butter, sticks of butter. And I'm going, okay, sticks of butter,
Oh,
but they're one
interesting.
color, you know, that
Yeah.
light yellow buttery color.
Mhm.
And it is, so you get the sense of dimension to them. But the trick that a lot of people are starting to do with this, like the Toledo Museum of Art, is that they start to take letter forms and place them within these
Yeah.
flat dimensional areas so that it starts to define space and planes within it,
Yeah, cool.
and starts to give you some,
Yeah.
sense of space.
Mhm.
But the other thing that's really intriguing is the amount of animation. And of course, this is a print report, so we aren't showing the animation here. But if you start taking a look, there's any number of firms that are using these where they start to extrude and they contract and they move around, but it's still that isometric kind of shape.
Yeah, I can see that.
That is, and in one color. So you really get this idea. Delivery app, which is basically a let's say it's an Uber for your package. You can call these guys up and they'll pick up your package. They'll put it in the back seat, strap it in, and they'll drive it across town to wherever it's going. And if you go to their website for delivery app, you'll notice that they've got this logo that extrudes and expands in one way or the other. I think it's basically to show people our car is only so big, so don't send anything too big. I can't put a bike in the back seat, but I like the idea that we brought it down to this kind of
like
Me
limited,
too.
limited
It's great.
space, right?
It's great.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. The animation part of this would be a blast to work
Yeah, I
with.
can see that for sure.
That's obviously becoming a must-have now. I'm including it in almost every package that we do for a logo because it's added work, and I think that's the best. And got a great.
Hey, you know what? Okay, so I've got to make this pitch and this plug here real quick.
Go ahead.
So the dirty little secret is this report was done about a month and a half ago. We're just now releasing it, but I'm the author for most of the identity and branding courses for LinkedIn Learning. So if you go on to LinkedIn Learning and look up Bill Gardner or Logo Lounge, you will find this year's report, and it's ready to go.
Okay.
And it has a lot of the animation in it. Plus,
nice.
There's about 3 or 4 times the amount of content on each one of these trends.
Okay.
That we kind of break it down much deeper. So
yeah, I would love to see the animation iterations of these. That's very cool. And I can totally see how that would come to life. That's very neat, Nick, that you're now providing that as a part of your package. Because people you can't envision how that will, you have to showcase it. And that's when the wow factor comes in. It's so cool when you see
it comes to life.
your client kind of scoot back and go, oh,
I'm going to buy
awesome.
that. I love it. Ugly, but the animation's damn good. I want the animation. In all seriousness, if you start to think about the visual vocabulary that hangs with a logo, the typography and the color and the texture and the pattern and the photography and the illustration and all these components, they are becoming more a priority within a brand package than the logo is anymore. Because if we're covering bigger acreage on a package, or we're covering bigger acreage on a digital product, the logo can't always be there, but the animation that you do may be the key to that brand that you start to understand.
It's also the characteristic, and the movement gives it personality. And I'll never forget, it might have been a conversation we might have had. We years ago, I think we all had a conversation, and we were talking about logos, and you said something like, logos need to be are alive now. Like they have to have a pulse. There's a soul, and that movement gives you the best chance to match what you have in your creative brief, who the brand is. That whole if it could talk, what would it be? It's like, well, if it could move, we're going to show it to you.
All the same, yes.
Yeah, I love it.
Cool.
You remember that pretty well. You're welcome to travel with me wherever you want to, Nick.
Let's
and
go,
you can just
man.
do that speech. I don't even need to dive into it.
All right. This one, I'm guilty of this one big time. This one is called Corner Chop. You nailed it. Yeah. Oh, look at that. I love that trade aerial one. That's fantastic.
Why are you saying guilty of? This is awesome.
Well,
I've used it.
Yeah. Okay. And it's here's the other thing that we always say, which is that we don't put these in here because we're suggesting doing them. We're putting them in here so that you can see what's being done, and that you can stand on the shoulders of these designers and you can press this to its next better iteration. And we call trends evolution. we all live by trends, but they always continue to evolve. And as designers, we are the evolvers, and so you look at these and people, nobody's replicating each other. They're all taking their own take on this, but I love the way that, for instance, on the information, which is actually a technical newsletter, that you can read that as a T and you can read it as an I, but you also get that little cut off corner that indicates this is a shadow in here. So it starts to develop some level of dimensionality in there. I will say that you can get really carried away with this. And
it doesn't work when you do.
We've all seen that person who takes a piece of type and they say, well, I'm going to customize this. So they start chopping off corners. And it's kind of like, well, I chopped off corners on 6 of the 12 letters. I better chop it off on all the other 6.
Yeah.
And
then it gets carried away.
Yeah. Stop. Yeah. But with purpose, I think that this tends to be this connecting element. The other little comment that I make in there about this triangle is that we've all shown a logo that was pointy to a client. Maybe it was a star. And so the client looks at it and they go, yeah, but it's so pointy. And I'm going, it's a star. Okay. I said star, and there's 5 of them on this one.
And stars are sharp.
It's in our cerebral cortex. We have been bred. We have, as human beings, we avoid things that are sharp. You don't want to step on a thorn. You don't want to get cut by glass. You don't want to, so sharp things we have a natural aversion to, which means that triangles are relatively sharp, which is one of the reasons that you don't see a lot of triangle logos.
And
but if you cut a triangle
subconscious.
If you cut a triangle off, you're easing an edge.
Yeah.
So most of these were basically removing a triangle as opposed to adding a triangle. So
Got it. Yep.
And done so tastefully too. I love this one because it's kind of this is one of those tools in our little graphic designer handbag to make something more interesting by the subtraction of like an overlap or the subtraction of, like you said, the triangle.
So well said.
I love this because this also keeps us so in that, like, like designing your logo in one color first, right? This to me is so neat. You're adding a level in there without adding a color. And it's such a cool tool to use in so many different ways,
Yeah, talk about this one at far right, adding dimension, almost like mirror-esque with a number. Yeah, it's very, very cool.
But look how simple it is. And they're talking about
it's minimal for sure.
Logo for Harrian, but what it's a total of 6 triangles and a couple of parallelograms. It's
it's wonderful.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yep.
Love that. Great. Another good, like, little, like you're saying, like, get inspiration from this, find a way to implement and use. I like how you say it.
And hit the ground running with the concept altogether. Yeah.
Oh gosh, look at this one.
Okay, cool. So nothing new about an ellipse. Okay.
No.
Seriously, but
we're here to report, guys.
But every year we've got those shapes that kind of rise to the top that you're kind of going, God, everybody's lynching onto this year. I mean, they're latching onto it and running with it. And I think the other thing about this is that you'll notice all of these ellipses play a role with other ellipses inside that logo. So it is telling a story about space, or it's telling a story about motion. And you can start to go, okay, is that a circle that's being squashed, or is it a disc that is being turned so that you're starting to see other aspects of it? But you can start to see sequence in here. And I think that it's really smart the way that it's being utilized by all these designers.
Me too. It's great.
It's also it's got like rhythm to it. Like you can create a beat with it. I like the far right, almost creating optical things to kind of look at, which is great. I love the little gradient within there as well.
So think about what when you're working on a logo for a client, they've given you a list of things. You built that brief. You know what it is you're trying to achieve, and one of those things may end up being a motion that they are known for, or it may be that they have a sequence that they follow in doing something, or a pathway that they follow. And when you start to look at these, they all start to lay out this kind of linear path, or this rotating path, but it is indicative of that. So you're trying to express that for the client on top of whatever else you're trying to express here.
Yeah.
Okay.
This diesel puppet game one is pretty cool. I can imagine Like this one, like I'm assuming if that was something I designed, my client would be like, "Can we embroider that?" And I'd be like, "Yikes!"
Well, and actually, there's no gradient in there. It's a
I know,
three-color
but
logo.
it's the tightness of those, tightness of the in there and everything for scalability.
Yeah.
But I always love to applaud something that is so not my style.
Yeah,
I love seeing something like
it's
this
more
would never be
that way.
It would never be one of my solutions to a client.
Yeah, interesting.
But
Same
that's
with
what
me.
I love seeing these things. So it's not just the
I
trends.
love the start of this. Poor ellipses. Always living in. That's so cute. That's so cute.
I love it. I love it. All right, here we go. We're on our next one, and this is Pixel Drop. Yeah, this is great.
Okay,
Wow.
So here we go. When you reboot something, 30 years later, there is a 30-year window that we all tend to look at, and we say, it's going to cycle back. That pendulum's going to swing back. And sometimes they move quicker or slower, but okay, if you go back to when we first started looking at doing anything for computers, we had language that we worked with, didn't we? We said, okay, we're going to work with pixels, or we're going to work with circuitry board, or potentially we're going to, and we've got all of these things which are cliched about, this idea of work, but pixels have come back so strong. Because there's an entire generation that was unfamiliar with 8-bit pixels, and it's there are artists that do amazing art now, and especially with a bunch of the Neo games that people are starting to put together that are high pixel orientation. It just speaks to a generation that didn't have to live through it the first time.
Sure.
It's also something where if you do it subtly, I love the fact that, like on Live Kit down there, it's just a couple of modest shifts. It's nothing very serious. The other one,
great.
Go ahead.
This brand Forma reminds me so much of Config with Figma. So much.
That's one of my
it's
favorite.
Got a lot of that simplicity to it.
Brands, yeah. I love what they did with Config. Also, too, I think you might have had this in like morphing pixels at one point was a trend where
maybe
when they round and then they merge.
God, good memory. Good memory.
That's one of my favorites. But this one, you look at maybe Trust Design Shop. I think if you zoom in there, like I love those little like rounding the corners just ever so slightly.
Yeah.
So optically it just softens it, but it's still sharp.
Ooh, good point.
Yeah. I love seeing that. It's so cool.
Don't forget that pixels work in diagonal.
Yeah.
That's when they show up.
Interesting.
Because then you're putting them corner to corner.
Yes.
So, yep.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And in every way, they're all diagonal is the key. It's a shift.
Yeah. And if you look at that one for StudioPod there on the far left, you'll notice that that's one of the few in here where the pixels have shifted scale when they work together. As opposed to everything being the same size.
There's expansion and minimizing.
Yeah. It's a halftone.
Hey, we've invented the halftone. Ow! Patent it.
I love it. I love it. That's great. All right, we're moving on. Oh, this one cracked me up because my gosh, bell bottoms is the best way to talk about this. And
I want to be at that round table coming up with all these these lead-ins
next year, Bill.
These please
call us.
They're fabulous.
I'll give you a shout, and we'll get together on this because
this is so fabulous.
It's kind of an outgrowth of our resurgence of Art Nouveau or Deli Nouveau, or it's. If you start to think about Art Nouveau, one of the things about it is that it has this expansion of line weight that is in there that has a whip to it at the end of it, and a lot of times in the letter forms. And we just basically have taken away the whip, and we've taken that foot that comes out to that expansion point. One of the things that I found really intriguing about this was that Blue Mountain, which is in Australia, and Norfolk Coast is in Australia, and Blue Mountain is in the UK. They both used this same kind of expansion point in their letter forms for destination points on different sides of the world. And it's just I gotta say, I don't know how much leg this thing has. I don't know that it's gonna stick around a long
no
time.
pun intended with the bell bottom.
Exactly, with the bell bottom. But there's so many letter forms that people are having so much fun with right now. And there's a lot of curvaceousness, and there's a lot of thick and thin line work that's kind of going on in it, variable line weights in there, and people are just having fun with it, and continue to have fun for the next 3 years.
Yeah, Bill gives it 3 years. I give it maybe 2.
I'm just telling you. We'll start. It's that pendulum. It's going to start to slow down.
You've been doing this a while. I bet you're projecting correctly.
Well, we'll see. In 3 years when we're on here, when I'm on here, we're going to find out. Okay.
Bill, would you ever consider when you're doing this, because you do this for us to be better designers in general, right? Like that's the whole point.
Yes,
of this,
that's why I'm doing
it. Is a tool. Would you ever consider like marking one of these and saying like, use it before it's too late, like this? Because it's almost like
putting an expiration date on, used before.
Yeah, as much as I love this and I think this is great, I think this will scream a certain time period or trend very quickly, the way a lot of other very trendy things have done in the past.
Yeah, and again, we that's another one of the things that we press on people is it's a trend report, not a trendy report. And but I think trendy is a dead end as a rule. It's going to happen in a flash, and it's going to burn out, and people are going to look back and say, "You remember last week when we did that?" But when you look at a trend, I think that it probably is on its way to a greater destination. So I love that. It may be contracting, it may be expanding. Yeah, but
there's an evolution involved.
It's on a stage in its journey.
Yeah. It will morph in some way or form.
Or it almost like tames down and gets more classic and timeless in a lot of ways, but like this stuff shows up on every client mood board for food and beverage, particularly what I do.
Does it?
And my first thing to them is, do you want to lead or do you want to follow? Because right now you're going to be, if we do this now and it's out in market in 7 to 8 months, you're already behind today. Like why would, and I get it, because I think the non-designer is these things that rise to the top, they see it in Instagram posts, they see it on streaming channels, they see it everywhere.
Yeah, and they're so eager to jump on.
Exactly.
So our job is all kind of an outgrowth of Mashmeyer's design that he did for Chobani when he was there, and it had been highly kind of robot kind of monoline letter form that and it was about the same time that Stranger Things came out, and people were starting to kind of go, whoa, what are those things on the ends of those letters that are there?
It's growing tails.
What's this serif stuff? And so we did the serif because we wanted to get rounder and more voluptuous, and started to bring people back into it and feel like you could hug it. And then we started to have some fun with it, and we started to say, okay, what happens if we really blow out the weight of this and we really tuck that serif way in there, and we start to build an ink trap into this thing that goes a mile deep and comes back out, and it so we started having fun, and I think that fun is going to continue here for another 3, maybe 4 years.
There you go.
But honestly, I think that we're going to start to kind of pull back in. We'll have a little bit more conservative nature, but it'll blow back up again.
There you go. Yeah,
it's all part of the
this is also the birth of kind of the variable fonts that have been showing up lately. And the slider, like you could take a simple font, move the slider back and forth, and it will increase the curvature. It will decrease the curvature, or the thick and thin.
So much.
Gosh, it's amazing.
Yeah, they've gotten so much more capable with what they can do with the letter forms now. It's not just a matter of thick to thin or condensed to expanded. Everything about it.
Oh, so. It's wonderful. I love that. It'll keep people from stretching type without any nuances.
For sure.
Thank God for the variables. Oh, this one I love. Liquid Bridge. All right, tell us a little bit about this one, Dill.
Okay.
Gosh, don't some QR codes look like this altogether?
Yeah. It's that morphing, merging grid, right? Yeah.
Okay, so pay attention to this one, because if something does have legs, I will tell you, and I make this comment, I think, in the report, is that this is one of those that was the hardest one for me to really kind of pull together. I've got a lot of other examples in this category, trying to say, what is this massive commonality? Because it isn't as defined as some of the other ones. But I also think that this has the greatest potential of really kind of turning into something else. Okay. The things that I look at here is typically imagine two water droplets starting to merge together. You're starting to get this connectivity that you're building here. Everything is highly rounded, if you will. Anything that is linear is only a running edge, but everything tends to round out. I will say that if I can encourage you, go on to the website for this first one, which is done by Anti. And frankly, if you were to go to Armin's site, brand new, and type in Anti, you'll be able to pull up their stuff really quick. And I always credit Armin because they've got such a great resource too, as far as going to look at what's been happening over the year. But this particular one, this Anti, they're operating design-wise on this whole different level. They're in Norway, and that actual one is for the Research Council of Norway. And if you go to it, you'll find that they've developed this mathematical formula that allowed them to do, I think 38 different agencies.
Wow.
That all look like that first one, except they are all a little bit different, and mathematically there's a formula that allows this to all happen.
That's amazing.
I'm
don't know
pulling
if you
that up.
found that in there.
Yeah. Tell me if this is it, Bill. I think, is this it?
Yeah, I'm curious.
There you go.
Look at this.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
And
that's so cool.
If you actually get into their site, there's an animation in there that shows how this whole thing is actually, it's just,
gosh.
Yeah, it just freaks me out, the thought that went into this. But
wow.
So back to the trend that I think this is part of. It is this. There's the formula. Watch that, and that'll start to give you a little bit of a sense of how this works.
Sorry.
Wow, I'm so impressed with you guys. You've got the ability to do all this fancy wizardry on your podcast.
We're trying,
now.
baby.
We do now. But it hasn't been long.
That.
Oh, this is so cool.
It's like cool. Rubber bands between cylinders.
Totally.
Look at this.
But there's a formula, and you'll notice that there's a 16 peg grid there that all this is based off of. With equal roundouts and the likes. So anyway, when you start to dive into this thing, you realize that it's just one part of a larger system. But man, it's kind of like some alien language that you don't know what it says, but you know that it's all interrelated. So when you come back to the trend and that brand, you're kind of going, okay, I get that these are all linked together and they all work together. But as you start to look across the board at all of these, I think that you start to get the sense of, are things coming together? Are things starting to merge off of each other and separate? Is it that we're working together in different pods to achieve the same objective? Is it, and you got to think through all these things, because that's going to relate back to the message, the story that you build behind that brand for your client.
Yeah. Especially if you're trying to say merging or different worlds coming together, or whatever it might be. You always get that. How many times do you get that on a brief and you're like, in what world can I come up with a mark that represents what the client wants? And I love this vibe. And these are great, Bill, because you're showing yes, I can see the challenge in finding the common thread here, but these four are probably the most different amongst any
know
of the
that
trends.
when I'm doing this, and again, if you go to the LinkedIn Learning Tape, you'll probably see another 12 of these. But when I'm pulling this trend together, I may end up having 35 different pieces that I'm kind of going, I kind of feel like these belong together, but I guess these are kind of outliers, and these are closer together. And how do I express this idea that I'm seeing start to come together here? I'm just not, so this one's a little bit looser than some of the other ones, but again,
really
something
cool
to work for.
Really cool.
Yeah.
All right. We got another one. Oh, these always make an appearance, don't they? Mixed sticks. I've tried
we've seen
this
these
and I've never been
before.
successful with this. I love this
Well,
look.
it's there's some complexity for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So
And
this is still going strong.
So I think what's going on here is this idea. If you saw the Olympics in Beijing a number of years ago, the Bird's Nest, which was
right.
Their
major
arena
coliseum there, their arena, had this beautiful kind of configuration architecturally on the outside of it, which looked like very random monolithic kind of lines that crossed over each other, this woven nest. And as I get to looking at these are all made out of just rectangles. Every one of those is a rectangle, if you will. But there is a certain randomness to it, or a certain chaos, but there's a certain order to it. And I think nest is almost perfect, because you think about it, if an ornithologist were looking at a nest, they could tell you what bird built it, despite the fact, because Orioles build a nest that looks like this, and a robin builds one that looks like this, and so despite the fact that every one of those nests is going to be different. So think about that translated over to logos. You can start to develop an aesthetic with the line work and the way that they kind of work together, so that everyone is different, but we know that it belongs to that set. If I look at the Ski Austria, one of the things I love about that is that they were kind of going, well, okay, here's a letter A, but I'm also going, well, these are the ski runs, and this is a map of the thing, and this is so you're starting to give a greater depth.
Getting into the accident with a number of people on the slopes with a bunch of skis running into each other.
So this is a garage sale on the slope, and it's or Friday, which I love that little mark for Friday, which is a place that just makes exceptional French fries. So here's 3 fries, but they aren't squared up. They're not perfected. They're,
no.
So
no, right.
Man, I will confess, some of the hardest things to do is place things randomly. Like if you look at the
with purpose,
right?
I know.
Like particularly in a logo, because you're like, you want to lock it up. You want it to be the final one.
But purposefully messy.
So hard. Yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah. That
can
AI help me with that?
You need to get the fist drop app for your computer.
There you go.
So that you can.
Yeah, right. But that's essentially what it is. It's just like laying down a bunch of Q-tips and seeing where they fall.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I mean, we've all been at that point where we were trying to put stars on a sky.
Forget about it.
Okay, so I guess let's put a couple of them right next to each other, and then one over. And I'm going, okay, God had this thing figured out when he did it, but I'm not sure I can really.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it's funny. I love imperfections, but as a designer, you love the perfect imperfections.
Sure.
It's a problem. Yeah.
I think I got to talk to Adobe about adding a randomize button on Illustrator.
So,
can you imagine?
So a lot of times we'll refer to that.
Don't you think that's coming?
Yeah.
It is. Organized chaos is the phrase that I will use. If you were to take a bucket of white paint and you were to put a drop of black paint in it and put the stir stick in it and make one stir around, it's going to be different every time, because it's chaos. But it's organized, and that there's one circle and one. So it's organized chaos.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. All right, we are into our little next one here. Smiley. Ooh, Smiley. Now this one, I've seen the Freely one before. That seems, but this is cool. Tell us about
it. So I'm going to go back to the fact that there are a bunch of kawaii characters that we're seeing, and if you're not familiar with that term, it's the little Hello Kitty characters from Japan. Yep. The Japanese in particular have a fascination with this for all ages, not just for kids, for all ages, of adding a face to something. And we're seeing a lot of that, and especially in the food service industry and the hospitality industry. But the thing that I started to notice was just people randomly sticking 2 dots on things, representative of eyes. So anything would become an eye. You had a bag, you put 2 dots on it, it was a bag eye. If you whatever it is. And as I started looking at this, I got back into the story of Harvey Ball, who was the one responsible for drawing the first happy face. And it was, and when you think about this, the story is there was a young woman named Joy Young who was the communications person for an insurance agency back in Massachusetts. And at the time, they had just merged. Everybody was kind of downtrodden. They weren't feeling good about the merger. And she said, "I'm going to make them happy. I want a button that's just got a smile on it." And Harvey looks at it and he goes, "Well, half your employees are going to turn that upside down and it's going to be a frown. And they're going to wear that button as a frown." He says, "Here," and he sticks 2 dots on it and charges her $40. And that was the invention of the happy face. And, and it's ubiquitous and it's everywhere. But those 2 dots, that $40, $20 an eye, that is everywhere. And if you stick 2 dots on something, you
can't turn it upside
yourself
down.
an eye. It's humanized. You look at the Android logo, you look at the Reddit logo, you look at how ubiquitous those 2 dots are. And this year, 2 dots were everywhere.
Oh yeah, the Discord logo has it with the 2 dots in it. Yeah, I think it's just that quick way to humanize, or like you said, kind of add that quick character to it. In the simplest ways, and then even like this one, just being a random, blob, and the character comes to life automatically. Yeah,
they will tell you, by the way, that Panzone is actually the owner of that little Italian restaurant in New York, and apparently he's a dumpy little. I don't want to go into it, but they said that is the owner, and put a couple of dots on him, and there he goes.
That's so good. Yeah, I love the Freely one. That to me has such good balance. Love it. Looks great.
And it doesn't need the smile. If you got the smile, that's fine. But
a
couple of dots.
Yeah. I almost picture that as like the quarter top of maybe like the head. Like
same here. Same here. I see that.
Yep.
Yeah. Very cool.
I see that.
Oh
Perfect.
yes. This one we've seen. Okay, stickers. They're hot and heavy.
Totally.
Shit. And here's a question for you. What's the difference between a sticker and a logo? I don't know. It's kind of like the thing that makes these stand out is typically somebody has done something to them, given them an edge, given them a shadow, given them some component. Because we all know that if you draw a sports logo and you put that little gray, sports outline around it, well, okay, theoretically that could be a sticker, or is it just a sports logo?
They're tangible. Yes.
Yeah.
It's got a board. It's got a border. It's like enclosed, right?
But I think that where it really sells is that it's being used digitally now. And the other mark that it's a sticker is, instead of putting it perfectly square in the corner of this grid, you kind of throw it up there in outer space. You kind of let it free swim,
float
wherever it wants to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Free float.
Yep.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. I mean, this is timeless too, because a lot of these designs are very retro to a degree. Mm-hmm. They appear very retro. So I like it. I like it. And for some, that really hits home and is comfortable and safe because of its lifespan already. There's familiarity up till now. So it's comfortable.
They're so applicable to application. This to me feels like an emblem on a car, right? It feels like
definitely decal-esque.
Right, yeah. And I'm always I'm a fan of that. And I love that idea of like
I am too.
Versatility. How many times have you, like, sometimes you have a great logo with a client and then it's, when you put it on something, it needs that automatic border or something to hold it. And again, going back to like the motion thing I mentioned earlier, this is always a cool thing to add to a logo collection for a brand you're doing. Do a badge.
You're so right. Yeah.
Right. Do a badge.
And there are a lot of designers that are kind of going, seal, okay, here's our logo, but we're going to develop this entire family of components. And what a great way to invent swag, I mean, and it doesn't, and it can be virtual swag. It doesn't have to be, I mean, you can go onto a site and you can move, the swag around on the screen, or it can be animated, or it can, be something that you receive when you pick up the product, or, but it really has added this kind of life to products that can exist both in a virtual environment as well as in a tactile environment.
Yeah. So, love it. It's like an overlay. You can just add to anything that you're currently working on.
And don't abuse your brand, because if you do, somebody's going to slap somebody else's sticker on top of yours. Yeah. So
there you go.
Just saying.
All right. We are at center point, and I automatically love that Atrium font so much.
Yeah.
And the mark next to it is so cool. This is awesome.
Do your magic and go to Bedeau. And I will tell you that these guys were so nice. And again, the designers of this Bedeau. And you can also get there through Armin on brand new. But they have, so this is a clinic, and inside of it, there's this large, tall atrium. And what they've done is they've taken that letter A from atrium and they've spun it 4 ways and they pushed it together so that you've got this square atrium. But then they animated this thing so that as you get into it, you'll find that if you were in an atrium and you shifted your perspective of where you were looking up into that atrium,
for sure,
you would find that the actual visual is going to shift around.
Yes.
Go on down to the animation.
Love it.
There's an animation on there.
Let's see these backstories are awesome.
Look at that.
There we go. Now watch the logo here for just a second. Let's see if it.
Oh my goodness.
You're not there yet. Here we go. Oh. Okay. See if they move it around. I think.
Let's see.
Nope. You're maybe.
Keep going.
Let's keep going. I think there's another. Yep. There. That one. Watch the center of that logo, and you'll notice that.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
So there you go.
I love this.
So
Bookmark Central right here.
So again, think about the richness of these marks anymore. You're not just designing this static component. You need to think about this thing and how it's going to live in, this next generation of environment.
Definitely.
You got to press it into the future, and pressing it into the future doesn't mean that I add one more line. It means you start to think about it in dimension. You start to think about it, in material. You start to think about it in animation. But that's really and again, Bedeau is the design firm on this, and I think they do some other stuff that's just really brilliant. So
what I love about
good stuff.
I love branding for environmental in spaces, experiential, because like, let's say you're doing something, this looks medical. This looks like, obviously you're going there for body scanning, some other stuff. And to give you this kind of environment and the brand, there's a comfortness here that I feel like, let's say you're nervous. I mean, our job is to calm this down. And I think what they did here is so killer. This is like, God, this is so less is more, Bill, but it's like, it's more. It's so more.
They've got great type, by the way, as well on this. But to your point, I mean, you want to have that level of confidence when you go in somewhere. And with any client, if you are detail oriented in all aspects, we make assumptions that you're detail oriented in other things. So, I love that identity too, that you just were passing over another one of theirs.
One here.
Watch the way that these two coins rotate with each other. And the lines actually never move. They stay
it's like
at
a mask.
Same angle.
It's like a mask, right?
Isn't that great?
Look at that. Wow. Oh, these guys are incredible. These guys are incredible.
They do. Yeah.
Damn.
All their stuff is sweet.
You're giving me so many things to bookmark and go back on.
I know.
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, there are so many great designers that are members of Logo Lounge or that are designers around. And I think a lot of people don't realize that our members are literally, I think got members in 160 countries around the world that have submitted to. I didn't know there were that many countries. But it literally is international in orientation.
That's amazing. And it's true. What better way to see what the rest of the world's doing? Not just your backyard, but like I love when I can find some international kind of reference or inspiration.
Yeah, it's so important.
Because we just stay in our bubble. And
it's so easy to just stay in your bubble. And with I'm so grateful for these episodes for that very reason, you guys, honestly.
Right?
I mean, you in discovery phase for any type of brand identity job, you do the due diligence of the research and checking competitors' work, but not at this scale. At this scale.
You're bringing us the world, Bill. Look at you.
You're bringing us the world.
Okay, so this one's one of the world that blew me away.
Okay, go.
Because as I started, arrows. I mean, we've a million arrows, but in fact, arrows was a big thing this year. And I was kind of going, God, how long I mean, there were obviously arrows that, the cavemen used to draw on the scow, or that that the Egyptians put in their hieroglyphics, or no. the arrow didn't even exist until the 18th century.
Wow.
Up until that time, we used a manual, which was a hand. They would, so you've seen a million times drawings of little hands that were used, pointing this way or that way. That was how we pointed, was with a little symbol of a hand. And it wasn't until the 18th century that somebody said, you know what, I'm gonna draw the flow of a river, and how do I show it? So they drew a little arrow showing the direction on a map that the river flowed, and that was the first arrow. So we get to looking at arrows, and it fascinates me that arrows didn't even exist until the 18th century.
Huh.
It's
That's
just kind of
crazy.
like
Interesting.
Hard to believe.
Shocking.
And look at their evolution.
No doubt.
They don't have the fletchings, which are those little feathers at the end of them. When you start to think about it, it exudes a pathway. It helps to define motion, if you will. But in particular, this year, we were just inundated with everybody working arrows, a lot of times into letter forms, into other things, but just, man.
That's great. There's so many good ones here to look at. Oh, now this one, Webflow. That was a big one.
What do you guys think about that?
So. And it's so identifiable now. It's just established, that look, that mark look.
I think it's a perfect example. It encapsulates movement, optimism. I like that it's kind of like swooping upwards. There's like, to me, this is masterclass.
But as you look at those four logos, you see the commonality there, right? I mean,
they're stacked like building blocks, basically.
Yeah,
they're the balance, exactly.
There's one that's always just about ready to tip, and there's usually a little bit of a curve in one, but it's mostly angular and big, fat, consistently monoline weight kind of, damn, they're. I love a good solid mark. I'm old school from that perspective, so I like the solidity of some of these.
Yeah.
I think that they give a certain boldness and stand out well. But I also love going back to the corner chops. It's the negative space. It's the things that are extruded from this that are taken out of it that really make it. So
yeah, and they're so like bold. They stand out. One color, and it gives you all the characteristics they need. All right, passages.
Yeah. So, and again, I'm reporting.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I love these. I'm saying I'm reporting.
Yeah, no, we know. Yeah.
So,
this is not favorite selections. We understand.
Yeah, but it's, it generally is a group of concentric lines that work down into a funnel or a tunnel or a point of perspective. And it's taking you on a pathway, and I get it. And it shows motion, but it also can start to show some aesthetic based off of whatever the shape is it's taking in there. One of them that I had was a keyhole that goes down. So, okay, we're going to unlock something, or we're going on a journey. I get that. Right. One of them was a set of stairs, and we're kind of going, okay, we're going up this set of stairs. We're
topographic to a sense. Yeah.
Yep.
I think this is one of those ones I can put in the column of when I'm out of ideas and I need something to be like 180 from what I typically do. This is what I would look to. You know what I mean? So there's so many value, even if it's not right off the bat jumping out to you and going like,
sure,
yes,
right, worth visiting.
Exactly.
I understand.
And these are all nicely done. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they are.
Okay.
Exactly. Radar sweep. Ooh. Okay, I see that.
Okay. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're seeing these around a ton now.
So, what really makes this a differentiator is if you look at that one that's safer vision, you get that it starts out light, and as you sweep that line around, it becomes dark. So there's this great story about Philo Farnsworth, who is the guy that invented the television. But before he invented TV and he was playing around with cathode ray tubes, they had invented this sweeping arm on a radar. And if you can imagine, as that line goes around, and it bleeps because it sees an incoming missile or whatever it is, it automatically vanishes as soon as that line goes by.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
guy's going, well, it was, I saw a bleep, but I'm not sure it was, but
Yeah.
Philo knew that there was a way that you could delay the vanish. So Philo introduces
Neat.
them to this thing that keeps the screen from going just completely blank. It slowly fades out for about a 2-second fade. And that's what you've got here is that 2-second fade as that arm is swinging around. And, but it gives great dimension.
It
that
does.
180, if you check out the folks from Bramnos, you'll find that they've got a great animation of that.
That's gorgeous.
The thing, but it's just really, it's uniquely identifiable. And
the two on the left can either go from an aerial perspective, can either be coming out at you or going down into the opposite direction.
I hadn't thought about that. You're right. Yeah.
It's one of those weird optical illusions.
Funny? It can be. It's a total illusion that can go either way.
Wow. Okay, now you've got me. You got me hypnotized.
Deep. Now it's getting deep.
I know. Don't look at it too long. It's true.
Oh, okay, cool. So this is another great one with Nova Star.
Well,
yeah, we got here.
Here we go back to your dazzles. You're back to your dazzles.
The magic.
And,
yes.
Being used in so many ways, and none of these, by the way, that I showed were in the iterations that are being used for AI. All of these are ones that are being used, but notice how different they are. In that one that is for system era softworks, notice that almost doesn't have curvaceous lines. It almost has that more NATO kind of straight line down and out. You look at the very first one on the left, and you'll notice that it's coming up to a point that is chopped off. So there's a lot of different iterations of this.
Yeah, there are, and none of them indicate healthcare. That's always an reluctance. Is that it veers too far on one end, both religion and spiritually, as well as healthcare. So that's very, very interesting, these selections.
So, wow, Michaela, you just nailed something, which is that when you're looking at a star, 6 points, Star of David, 5 points, American Jingoism, 4 points. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
What is it? 4 points. It's kind of ecumenical
maybe that's
in a way.
what
it
makes
doesn't
it universal.
have to be associated with.
Yeah, I like it.
It shows some good versatility and adaptability. Again, I think this is one of those ones that all four of these are totally different, but it's got the common thread is something you could totally use for inspiration.
But all having the 4 points that was just mentioned, that is so interesting to me.
North, south, east, west.
Hey. Oh, we've gone through all of these. I love the collection. I want to try something different with you, Bill, this year.
Sure.
You ready?
Yep.
We're gonna do rapid fire. I want quick answers. You ready?
I'll do my best.
Okay. What was your favorite logo trend of 2024?
Probably back to Dazzle.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was just because there's so much story behind it. It is so volatile right now that
I love it. I agree. All right. If you could describe the 2024 logo trends in one word, what would it be?
Flat.
Flat.
Oh.
As a driver or a compliment?
See, so I'm using that because there's 3 different iterations and meanings of flat. You asked for one word, but I'm going to get 3 answers in there.
But you went with your gut there. Good for you,
dude. Smart. Yeah. I love it.
No, it's kind of flat. There's
Nick,
nothing that's
good job. Love it
really peeking out one way or the other.
Yeah,
but there's also that flatness to a lot of the imagery that you're seeing that's inside of there.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Which letter do you think will be the next lowercase g in terms of popularity in logo design?
Oh man, you found that in there.
I did.
Boy, okay, that's hard.
Ooh,
because my name's Gardner, and I've been playing with that lowercase g all my life
forever.
And
right, we all have that.
Yeah, so you guys are going to have to read the report to know this. But a trend that didn't make it that was just damn close is everybody is just having a ball playing around with the descender on the letter G. Everybody is doing some iteration on that, and it is the letter of the year. If you got a G in your name and you're doing a logo for it, you're golden.
Interesting.
Because there's so many interpretations of it. I've seen it like the tender greens, right, with the 2 circles. There's one of the Target brands, Good and Gather.
Yep.
They have one of the best lowercase G's I've ever seen. Like, love that. I'm so jealous.
I've always kind of felt like the G was kind of like a bastard child. It was just, I mean, I was always going, what the hell do you do with this thing? But
it's had its time to shine now.
it's doing.
All right, gradients or flat color?
Well, since I already said flat, I think that we're going to find something in between. I think.
Ooh, okay.
I think that we're starting to kind of run out of tricks to do with gradients, but I don't think they're going away.
Yeah.
My whole thing on gradients is, man, we can tell you who orange is. We can tell you who brown is. We can tell you who magenta is. So we start shifting over to something. And if you were to show somebody the gradient behind the Instagram, they would tell you that that was a color.
Oh,
wow. Yeah. Good way to look at it. Okay, last one. What's the most surprising trend you've seen emerge over the recent years?
Surprising.
Wow. Oh, you've caught me off guard. I think probably the shift to Sonic logos. And that probably wasn't what you were expecting. You're probably expecting something that was visual in orientation. But I think the most surprising trend is really kind of a shift to things that are not necessarily traditional logos, things that aren't necessarily tactile, that are going to end up representing and becoming a logo. And can a logo be a non-visual thing? I think it can.
Like in commercial use and like a word or a voice representing a brand?
No.
What was it? We talked about this before. What's a good example?
Let me do this. If I were to go, ba-boom, okay, there's Netflix. If I were to do,
that's the one.
There's Taco Bell. If I were to do,
Hulu has one.
There's Apple starting up. It's but a single sound or a couple of sounds that identify, or is it just a kind of sound that represents you? And I think that we're starting to get smarter about the fact that people respond better if we can poke multiple senses as opposed to a single sense.
I was just going to say something like that about the senses, because it doesn't start and stop with visuals. It's true.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah. Imagine
what?
Smell's
With the liquid bridge, I have to interject that I went and looked at Arabic text, because I was seeing simulations between some of those curves, and I had to be like, wait, am I off key here? And I went to go look at it really quick. And there's some so interesting, but it doesn't mean that it appears foreign necessarily. And that's what's intriguing about all of these concepts.
And probably more than any other Arabic text, is dependent on calligraphy, which means that it's dependent
very much
on,
so.
It's dependent on a multi-dimensional line weight. You try and do Arabic text in a single monoline, and it's a failure. It just, you can do it, but it's not easily read.
Also fascinating to me. What a kick! Very enjoyable.
Yeah,
always a blast.
The report is very well put together, Bill. Yet again,
go look up real quick on your little type in Yinmin, and I'm going to spell it for you. YINMN. Which is a color of blue that in 2007, I think it was, a student at Oregon State and his professor went and they shoved some yttrium, and manganese into an autoclave, and they baked it up, and they opened the door, and they found the first new pigment for blue. And it's the most brilliant blue ever created that can be used as a pigment now. In paints, in textiles, in printing.
The new blue.
And if you notice Pepsi, their introduction of their new look, that they've introduced a companion color, which is Yinmin blue, or they call it electric blue. But you're going to find that everybody is using this particular shade of blue now in conjunction with their logos. because it is representative of the first new pigment created during this century.
Interesting.
Damn, you left us with a good one.
There you
love that. That's fantastic. Really cool.
Okay, so go to Logo Lounge.
Yes.
Which we've just relaunched. Logo Lounge, by the way, after 20 plus years of it, has an entirely new platform. It literally launched yesterday. Relaunched and entirely new.
I'm getting to it right now.
And if you're not logged in, I'll get you logged in.
I got you.
You got it.
Go. Here we go.
Very cool. Very cool.
Let's see.
New interface to it and everything about it. The book 14. Wow. Okay. Book 14 literally came out. Everything's happening in my life during this month happened at the beginning of this month. The trend report came out this month. Hey, what a great time we live in.
When it rains, it pours, Bill.
It's all good. And I got to talk to you guys this month. That's the coolest part of it all.
What a pleasure. What a pleasure.
Always
I really
great.
have to bounce because I have to head out with my son to a tournament.
There we
Mikhail,
go.
great to see you.
Bill,
So
thanks
great to
again
see
for
you.
everything. We'll have show
Always.
notes and everything in here.
Yeah, this was
always
fabulous
great.
to showcase. I mean, we haven't done that since we started recording here, Nick. So it's going to have a different life altogether.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right,
fun.
Bill.
Sweet.
Guys,
Go
have a great weekend.
Go get your son taken care of.
Yes, I will. Thank you. I appreciate
y'all.
you
Bye, guys.
understanding.